Some stories don't scare you by what they show, but by what they quietly suggest about who should inherit the world. There is a reason this story hides its real conflict behind a child esfasant, itayasen, tianasen. If you remember this as a simple fantasy, you may have missed the moment where humanity is subtly put on trial. There's a certain discomfort this film creates if you watch it closely. Not fear, not excitement. Something quieter. A sense that the ground beneath the story isn't as stable as it looks, that the rules you assume are in place might already be outdated. And if you stop paying attention too early, you'll miss the point where the movie gently turns its gaze towards you. This is The Seeker. The dark is rising, a modern fantasy rooted in ancient myth. But what it offers isn't escapism. It's an uneasy experience about inheritance, authority, and what happens when the future no longer belongs to the present. The reason many people dismissed it is the same reason it works if you're willing to sit with it. The story begins quietly, in a world that looks aggressively normal. A rural English town. Old houses. Narrow streets. Nothing here signals danger. That's important, because this is not a story where evil crashes in loudly. It seeps. It waits. It blends in. We meet Will Stanton as one child among many. He's not isolated, not special in any obvious way. He has a large family, loving parents, and siblings who constantly overshadow him without meaning to. Will exists in the background of his own life. And psychologically, that matters. This is a boy who has learned to observe rather than lead, to listen rather than assert. He doesn't command attention. He survives by adapting. On his 14th birthday, something changes. Not externally at first. The world doesn't explode. There's no dramatic reveal. Instead, time itself seems to hesitate around him. Clocks behave strangely. People pause in moments they shouldn't. The film doesn't explain this right away, and that restraint is deliberate, because Will doesn't understand it either. And neither should we. What's important is how Will reacts. He doesn't panic. He doesn't celebrate. Watches. The story is already telling us the kind of power this is. Not loud, not aggressive, observational. Soon, Will learns that his birthday isn't just a milestone. It's an awakening. He is the last of an ancient order known as the Old Ones, beings born human, raised human, but designed to stand apart from humanity's ordinary flow of time. Their role is not to rule, but to preserve balance against something called the dark. Here's where most viewers stop thinking deeper. Light versus dark. Good versus evil. A familiar fantasy framework, but the film never frames the dark as chaotic or irrational. It's structured, patient, organized, and more importantly, it believes it has a rightful claim to the future. The dark doesn't want destruction for its own sake. It wants succession. As Will begins to understand who he is, the world around him subtly resists. His family doesn't suddenly turn against him, but they remain anchored in normalcy. Dinner conversations, sibling arguments, holiday plans. They represent something fragile without knowing it, a version of humanity that assumes tomorrow will resemble today. Will can no longer make that assumption. He learns about the signs, ancient artifacts scattered across time, each one necessary to prevent the dark from rising fully. This quest structure seems straightforward, but notice how the film frames the cost. Every step forward pulls Will further away from his family's emotional orbit. He's still physically present, but mentally elsewhere. Knowledge is already isolating him. This is the first hidden insight the movie offers. Power doesn't separate you from others by force. It does it by perspective. Once you see the larger pattern, small lives feel unbearably small. Will is guided by figures who call themselves the Old Ones. They speak calmly. They never rush. They never fully explain. And they never ask Will what he wants. They tell him what is required. That distinction matters. These are not mentors nurturing potential. They are custodians activating a tool. The film never condemns them outright, but it doesn't romanticize them either. Their morality is ancient, not empathetic. They care about balance, not people. Will is valuable because of what he is, not who he is. Meanwhile, the dark begins to move more openly, but openly doesn't mean violently. It infiltrates through influence, authority figures, familiar faces. A man who seems helpful, reasonable, even kind. He speaks with certainty, not rage. He doesn't threaten Will. He questions him. This is where the story quietly turns. The dark doesn't deny Will's importance. It reframes Italiano. It suggests that the old ones are relics, clinging to a system that no longer fits the world, that humanity has changed, that control, not balance, is the future. The argument is seductive because it isn't entirely wrong. This creates the film's moral discomfort. Both sides claim preservation. Both sides believe chaos will follow if they lose, and Will is caught between ideologies that existed long before he did. As Will collects the first signs, time behooves less like a river and more like a weapon. Moments repeat. Locations overlap across centuries. The film uses this not as spectacle, but as pressure. Will's childhood is being compressed. He's being accelerated out of it. His parents notice something is off, not the magic, the distance. He listens less, responds slower, carries an invisible weight. The tragedy here is subtle. They're losing their son not to death, but to purpose. This leads to one of the most misunderstood elements of the story. Will's struggle isn't about bravery. It's about consent. He never asked to inherit this role. He was selected by birth, not character, and yet the survival of everything familiar to him depends on his compliance. The dark exploits this hesitation. It doesn't attack Will directly. It targets certainty. It creates doubt about whether the world he's protecting deserves to continue unchanged. Whether stagnation is just another form of decay, and this is the second hidden insight. The real threat isn't darkness. It's obsolescence. The fear that humanity, as it is, has reached its limit. As the signs come together, the pressure intensifies. The old ones grow colder. The dark grows more persuasive. Will stands in the middle, no longer fully a child, not yet anything else. He's becoming something post-human, whether he wants to or not. Every choice now costs him something invisible. Trust, belonging, simplicity. And what happens next doesn't escalate with noise or chaos. It narrows. It narrows. It forces Will toward a decision that cannot be undone, not because of what it will change in the world, but because of what it will erase in him. The closer Will comes to completing the signs, the quieter the world around him becomes. Not peaceful. Narrow. As if possibilities are being trimmed away one by one. This is deliberate. The film wants you to feel how Desi operates not as a grand calling, but as a slow removal of alternatives. By now, Will understands the mechanics of his role. He can move through time. He can command the signs. He can resist the dark. But understanding has not brought comfort. It has brought a heavier awareness. Every victory costs him something human. The dark no longer hides behind confusion. It confronts him with clarity. It shows him futures, not apocalyptic wastelands, but ordered worlds. Controlled, predictable, humanity guided rather than free. The argument is never framed as cruelty. It's framed as efficiency, stability, survival through dominance rather than balance. This is where many viewers misread the film. They assume the dark is lying, but the movie never confirms that. What it suggests instead is more unsettling. The dark's vision may actually work. It may even protect humanity from itself. That's the third hidden insight. The enemy isn't evil in the traditional sense. It's a competing solution to the same problem. Will is offered something tempting, not power, but relief, an end to responsibility, an escape from isolation, a chance to stop carrying the weight of an ancient system that refuses to adapt. All he has to do is let go. At the same time, the old ones tighten their expectations. They remind Will of duty, of lineage, of necessity. They don't ask how he feels. They assume alignment. To them, Will's inner conflict is irrelevant. The balance must be preserved, regardless of the cost to the individual bearing it. This is the emotional core of the film. Will is not choosing between good and evil. He's choosing between two forms of erasure. If he joins the dark, humanity loses freedom but gains order. If he follows the light, humanity survives but, well, loses himself. The climax arrives, not as a battle, but as convergence. Time collapses into a single moment where past, present, and future coexist. The signs are assembled. The dark presses in. The old ones stand ready. And here, the movie does something very quiet and very heavy. Will chooses, not out of triumph, not out of righteousness, out of acceptance. He fulfills his role as the seeker. The dark is pushed back. Balance is restored. The world continues. But look closely at what victory looks like. The cost is not destruction, it's forgetting. Will returns to his family, to his town, to his life, but something fundamental has been altered. The people he loves don't remember what was at stake. They don't remember what he carried. Time smooths itself over the fracture like it was never there. This is not a reward. It's containment. Will remembers everything, but he is no longer fully part of the world he saved. He exists between states aware, alone, necessary. The old ones fade. The dark retreats, and Will is left with knowledge without belonging. This is why the ending feels oddly hollow if you expect celebration. Because the film isn't interested in hero worship. It's interested in consequence. The final meaning becomes clear only if you resist the urge to label the ending as happy. The world is safe. Humanity continues. But the price of preservation is stagnation. The cycle will repeat. Another seeker will be born. Another child will be chosen without consent. Balance will be maintained by sacrificing individuals, quietly, politely, efficiently. The film's final realization is unsettling because it doesn't offer comfort. It suggests that humanity survives not because it evolves, but because someone else absorbs the cost of that survival. And will now fully aware, fully isolated is that someone... This is not a story about monsters or magic. It's about what societies demand from those they designate as necessary. It asks about how the future is protected by erasing the burden from everyone except the one who carries it. That lingering heaviness at the end isn't failure. It's the point. The dark will rise again. The light will respond again. And humanity will go on, mostly unaware of the quiet sacrifices made in its name. That's why this movie feels strange when the credits roll. Not because it scared you, but because it asked whether survival is always the same thing as progress.